Welcome to the Bodacious Women in Cannabis podcast, the show where the bold and brilliant women cannabis business leaders share their journey and their expertise. Here's your host, Susan Burns.
Welcome to Bodacious Women in Business, where we talk with executive women who contribute their special talent to the world, doing it their way. I'm Susan Burns, your podcast host and your on-call business lawyer and founder of the boutique law firm S. Burns Legal, located in St. Paul, Minnesota, where we support bodacious women in business to help them grow their business. And part of my practice is in the CBD world, so I'm especially excited because today we're talking with Shayda Torabi, who is the founder and CEO of Restart CBD. Welcome, Shayda.
Thank you, Susan, for having me. I'm excited to chat today about this great topic of CBD and cannabis.
Yeah, so let's just dig in. Tell us how you started your business and what it's about. I Restart CBD. Obviously, it's a CBD business. I'm assuming it's retail from looking at your website. But how did you start, and how long have you been in business, and what inspired you?
Yeah, great questions. Thank you. So we are a women-owned, sister-owned CBD brand. So I am one of three co-founders with my two younger sisters. And we are born and raised in Austin, Texas. And just before we were recording, you were making an acknowledgement, about Texas's cannabis laws. We do not have as advanced cannabis laws as, let's say, California or Colorado. So sometimes people are like, how do you work in cannabis in Texas? And so I had a very similar thought process when I was growing up in high school, college, looking towards what kind of career I would want to get into. And I'm really fortunate. I have an undergrad degree in marketing, and I feel very passionate about content creation and storytelling and brand building. And so I found myself out of college getting a job with a then startup that turned into being a pretty successful corporation. The company scaled quite a bit while I was an employee there. But during my time at that company, I got to wear many different hats because they were a startup and they were scaling very rapidly. And I really got to continue to hone in on my passions for brand building and storytelling and really trying to deliver a product to market, and not just a product to market, but a product to the right consumer, right? So really understanding what is it that we're selling and what is it that the consumer is looking after, and how do I deliver to meet their needs. And so being a cannabis consumer was something that I participated in the sidelines of my life. It didn't really come into an opportunity of going into business until unfortunately I was in a car accident. And I think like most people who are kind of navigating entrepreneurship, especially creating a product, there usually is some story, some impetus, some intersection of change that happens in their life. And so for me, I really loved, like I said, marketing, branding, communications, but didn't really see how I was going to, one, build a business for myself, two, see myself building a business in cannabis until this unfortunate accident happened. So that was kind of when my story transitioned from being somebody who was looking at cannabis as recreation. And then when the accident happened, my mother actually was somebody who suggested I look at CBD for medicinal purposes, for anti-inflammatory purposes, for pain management purposes. And to kind of frame it for, you and the listeners as well, I was in my car accident in 2015. So I was recovering 2015 to 2016. And during 2015 to 2016, hemp was not federally legalized. So I always like to highlight, it wasn't like it was illegal, it just wasn't legal. And so we were existing in this extremely gray area. And so we as a family became more familiar with CBD products, just because that was what my mother was homemade concocting me to use, balms, salves, topicals, and other sublinguals and edibles, kind of in the, that kind of product line. And I didn't, again, see a business opportunity, but I saw it healing my body and making an impact in my life. And so we launched Restart not right after my accident, but actually in 2018. So there were some years in between my family becoming familiar with CBD and cannabis from a medicinal perspective until we actually launched the brand Restart. And really what drove us to launch the brand was just really, again, kind of leaning into that storytelling approach. We were using CBD for ourselves, and my background with technology and platforms, I had, the encouragement from my mother, who was like, well, why don't you take, the base products that I was making you and turn it into a brand and sell them and educate people on CBD? And I thought, nobody's ready to talk about CBD. Nobody is going to buy these products. This is so foreign. And we launched in August of 2018.
The interesting thing also is, let me just interrupt you for a second.
Please.
In 2018 is when hemp became legal.
Right.
And
so
I
that's what I was
think
about
one
to
of
say.
the
It was
things that we
legal
want to clarify for the audience is that cannabis is the umbrella for both marijuana and hemp products. So that hemp is legal. Marijuana is not federally legal, but legal in, as you mentioned, Shayda, in Colorado, California, and several other states, but those being the most advanced, Oregon, I think. But anyway, so go ahead.
So the way we think about it is a little bit too like you were saying, hemp is anything that is less than 0.3% delta 9 THC, and marijuana is anything that is over 0.3% delta 9 THC. And so while marijuana is still considered a Schedule 1 drug, the hemp market was opening up. And so it became legal at the end of 2018. We launched our brand right before it went federally legal. So some people acknowledge, wow, you were kind of like right on the money. And I'm like, I didn't know that it was going to be federally legalized. And so we just as a family kind of found ourselves. It was very risky. And I will admit, I didn't start it as, how do I frame it? I didn't start my business to be full-time. I started it as a side project or a side hobby. And when we launched those 3 months, kind of between August and December, when it would fully be enacted, and then Texas would legalize in June of 2019. So we were really in this weird kind of mix of, are people going to talk about CBD? Are people going to buy CBD? Okay, people are ready to talk about CBD and people are ready to buy CBD. And we were this brand that was women owned. We had a story from my accident. We were knowledgeable. We became really big educators from the time of my accident to the time we launched. So 2016 to 2018, really learning about our endocannabinoid systems, learning about different cannabinoids, learning about different consumption methods, dosing, and all those things that we saw an opportunity to bring into our products. And so for us, that was really the inspiration and kind of like the path and the journey. It was just, I love cannabis very much. I exist in a state that does not have the most friendly cannabis laws. I had this horrible accident that put me in a position where I extra needed cannabis to help me navigate and maintain and manage my chronic pain. And, people kind of acknowledge too, does CBD make your pain go away forever? And it's like, no, I still deal with chronic pain today, but I grab CBD instead of grabbing opioids or steroid injections, which is what I was doing before we launched our brand. So for us, it was just really, right place, right time, really great opportunity. And that was really, how we were able to bring our brand to market. And the kind of final note I'll share is we are celebrating 4 years in business this year. So
congratulations.
Thank you. Gone through, the ringer, dealing with COVID, navigating being online, certainly cannabis laws. I know there's, Delta 8 kind of is one of those cannabinoids that's becoming more popular and also more questionable. Texas is currently in the middle of a smokable hemp ban, which places a lot of restrictions on smokable products, pre-rolls, cartridges, things like that. And we welcome those challenges because we really want to help give our community, first and foremost here in Texas, access to high quality cannabis products. And the other side of that coin is education. We want people to feel comfortable and curious to explore cannabis.
And very much needed, in my opinion, working in this space. I usually, when I'm having a conversation with somebody, I usually ask about what's the most challenging aspect of growing their business so far. And in that question with you in particular, I'd like to ask about the difficulty with Delta 8 and explain also to the listeners that it's a derivative from the hemp plant, but it's everything else is characterized. It's an isomer. You can look that up in your Funkin' Wagnalls. But so it's not Delta 9, and all the regulations that we have so far are tied to Delta 9. So there's a gray area with Delta 8, and we just had an appellate court opinion in Minnesota that just put everything in jeopardy for that. But that's not what this podcast is about. But I'm wondering if you've had, in your challenges, have you had that experience in Texas as well?
Oh, absolutely. I think, to kind of frame it for the listeners, first and foremost, and you did a good job like teeing it up, Delta 8 is a THC, so it is tetrahydrocannabinol, but it is not, I guess, categorized in the same way that Delta 9 THC has been categorized, both from a marijuana perspective, being illicit Schedule 1 drug, and also when you look at the 2018 Farm Bill, it really only speaks to that less than 0.3% Delta 9 THC and doesn't really speak to these other tetrahydrocannabinols, because there's also Delta 10, there's Delta 6A, 10A, there's other THCs, THCVs out there.
Delta
And
9A.
so, right, there's acid versions of these cannabinoids. And so the simplistic way that I will articulate it is, if you're looking at the, THC bond, it just has, one less of the little tails on it. So chemically, it is very similar to Delta 9, is why people, I think, are gravitated towards it. It does give a psychotropic effect. That is an association with the THCs. It is categorically a psychotropic cannabinoid. And so that's why, you feel high, you feel this euphoric effect. And I think there has been a lot of both excitement and scrutiny around Delta 8 over the last 2 years. So, when we launched our brand originally, we were actually a CBD isolate brand first and foremost. My sister and co-founder, my middle sister, is a former University of Texas collegiate swimmer and current Under Armour athlete. And so she really grew up not being able to put THCs in particular in her body, because she was competing at such a high level of sport. And that was just not something that she really dabbled with. Me on the other side, obviously, I love THCs. I love all these cannabinoids. And so when we launched our brand, we really went first and foremost with this isolate CBD oil product. Then as the market in Texas started,
THC in it.
that had no THC. So there's full spectrum, which has trace amounts of THC. And then there's isolate products that you now find: isolate CBD, isolate CBG, isolate CBN. These are all isolating cannabinoids independently. And, I think when you look at the efficacy of these cannabinoids, there's not as much research out there as there should be, but there is more research out there showing different cannabinoids in different isolations or in combinations with each other, or even different consumption methods can produce different effects, right? And so I just mentioned that because we, as a brand, that wasn't our intention necessarily to open up our spectrum of products to include things like Delta 8, but when you're in a market like Texas and you have consumers who are hearing about Delta 8 THC and they are curious about Delta 8 THC, it was something for us as a business that, we didn't take lightly. We realized that there were probably, for as many good ways to make Delta 8, there are bad ways to make Delta 8. And I say make because Delta 8 is such a minor cannabinoid existing organically in the cannabis plant that to accumulate enough to be put into a bottle of oil or into a cartridge to inhale.
Or a gummy.
Correct. There has to be some synthesis that happens. And I'm really clear to use the word synthesis because I don't believe synthesizing is bad. Synthesizing can happen naturally when you leave cannabis in, let's say marijuana in a closet. It converts over time. It naturally degrades based on heat, light, time, pressure into other cannabinoids. And so that is a synthesis. So to me, yes, there are bad ways to make Delta 8, but there's also good ways to make Delta 8. And so when we're looking at our market and they're looking and asking for Delta 8 products, I felt very much an ownership of delivering high quality versions of these cannabinoids. And so we approach selling Delta 8. It's been very lucrative for us. It's been very popular, but that popularity doesn't come without, the dual edge of the sword. One, from a regulatory perspective, we saw them go after Delta 8 in our last legislative session in 2021. They then have thrown it back and forth between different court cases. People sued the state saying that they couldn't take Delta 8 away because it wasn't explicitly in the legislation. And most recently, we've seen Delta 8 being pulled into the Supreme Court here in Texas. And so its resting place is yet to be determined. But to me, what happened with Delta 8,
the longitude of the planet, because it's the same situation in Minnesota.
I think it's just happening kind of. I think people's observation is that it's happening to states that don't have full legal marijuana programs. And so to some extent, I acknowledge that. I think certainly if we had marijuana access in full capacity of the plant, that maybe you wouldn't see some of these other minor cannabinoids coming to market. However, I do think that from our perspective too, seeing customers who have gotten exposure to Delta 8, they really like Delta 8, sometimes articulating more than even Delta 9 experiences. And so it just goes to show that there's so many cannabinoids out there and there's so many different biochemistries of humans. We're all different. Our digestion is different. Our diet is different. Our exercise, input and output is different, that there has to be more than just one way to consume cannabis, right? There's more than just one cannabinoid. And so Delta 8 to me really helped open up the conversation for other THC cannabinoids, other minor cannabinoids, like I mentioned, CBN, which is really great and showing a lot of aid in being more sedative than CBD. So people who are looking for more, rest and recovery are pursuing that cannabinoid. And there's CBG and there's CBC, all these other ones that are coming to market and research is being done. And so I feel very excited at the opportunity to help challenge and change some of these laws. And I'm sure you can relate and understand that perspective too. Just because the law says that this is X, Y, or Z, if we as a society don't challenge those laws might not get changed. And so it's trying to understand, well, why was this, taken to a lawsuit? Why is this being taken to the Supreme Court? How do we have influence into that conversation? So I now sit on cannabis boards that help lobby, that help advocate, that talk to policymakers. So for us, it's very much more than just, I always reference just transacting products. It's how do we also advocate and help influence the policy to make a better environment for cannabis adoption long-term and at a larger scale.
So I know you and I could talk about cannabis for a really long time, but my next podcast is going to be solely on cannabis. But to your business aspect about challenges, you've just highlighted some of the challenges. And I just want to interject. Personally, I think one of the most exciting things about cannabis is that the human body has an endocannabinoid system. So all those things that you were talking about, there's no end to what benefits can be brought to humans, for health and well-being. So I think that's a really positive thing in it. It's a shame that there's so much negative reaction for a lot of people just because how the media has portrayed marijuana.
That's right.
But for you and growing your business, you've articulated some of the challenges. Is there anything in particular that you would say is the most challenging so far, has been? And if so, how did you overcome that?
Yeah, I would say kind of a couple things come to mind. Unfortunately, being a cannabis business does impose more red tape. I don't want to say regulations because regulations is, very much part of the industry because we are unregulated in some capacities and overregulated in others. But I would say just by the status of where cannabis sits, it makes it difficult from a banking perspective. Just most recently, our payment merchant reached out to us and said that they can no longer process Amex credit cards. It seems like such a, small nuanced detail, but that call compounded over the past, 4 years of, well, you can't sell glass on your website. And it's like, well, I can sell you flower that looks like marijuana, but is legal hemp, but I can't sell you the pipe to smoke it out of. So little nuances like that when you are trying to just go get a bank, processing to establish your business, those have been just unique hurdles that I think that our industry has felt more closely. And we've certainly felt just because we do have a brick and mortar and an e-commerce. And so making sure that the integration of those systems speaks is sometimes a full-time job. But I would say, another challenge for us, which is very unique to cannabis, is just the stigma around it. So as a marketer and as a storyteller, I often reflect on, like, let's say I'm selling you cereal and I'm Lucky Charms and I want to sell you Lucky Charms. I don't have to explain to you why you need cereal in your life. I just need to explain to you why Lucky Charms is better than Captain Crunch, is better than Fruit Loops. But because of our industry, I don't have the luxury of selling you Restart CBD. I have to first sell you on what is cannabis and what is CBD and will it get you high and could you fail a drug test? And so I see a lot of what we do is brand building, but also cannabis education. So really having to break down all of our marketing initiatives, our communication, our conversations to really basic things. We have some customers. This was kind of early on. We started selling smokable products as we were transitioning our business, and we were selling pre-roll joints. And we had a lot of customers who were like, "I don't even know how to smoke a joint." And to me, as somebody who's been a lifelong cannabis consumer, especially from an inhalation perspective, that was so low-hanging fruit to me, so rudimentary. We recorded a video, and that video we put on YouTube has over 100,000 views, and it's like, oh well, our customers certainly weren't the only customers who had that question.
Right,
So
right.
you're witnessing a lot of people coming into legal cannabis, whether it's through hemp or CBD or marijuana, and having to educate them on the endocannabinoid system. What does CBD mean? How does it stack up against THC? So I would say those are definitely challenges that we have to face that are, again, I can't sell you my brand. I have to sell you the category for which I'm selling products into.
So you have in addition to all the typical growing pains of a business, which I like to think of as growing gains because it always turns into something positive. But
I love
you
that.
have additional legal and regulatory hurdles. And I think one thing that also is interesting in your industry is that so many of us use hemp-derived products for physical health, but you can't market it as a health product. I mean, it's the same like vitamins, but there aren't any regulations, and you can't really sell it federally. So I think that's a unique kind of thing, because everybody I talk to is like you. Well, I had a car accident and then I did this, or well, I had this happen and now I started using CBD, or and sometimes you have people that will say, "Oh, I tried it and it didn't work." Well, okay, wait, what did you try? How much?
Right.
When? Blah. So there, as you said, there's a lot of education that goes along with it. But along with the challenges, I think there have to be some really cool benefits to you in growing this business. So what's something like really unique that you would never have expected a hidden benefit to come out of this business?
Yeah, I would say kind of in that same vein of education, I think for us, we've seen the fruits of that. And I love, the way you're positioning it, growing gains, because I have a quote that I, reflect on a lot, and it's diamonds are made under extreme pressure. And so if you don't have challenges, then you are not going to grow if you don't put yourself in uncomfortable situations. And I think for us, originally, kind of to reflect a little bit on the last question, right? When we were first coming out as an educator, there wasn't a lot of people selling CBD back in 2018 when it first became federally legal. And so we struggled with, well, is what we're saying even right? Is it accurate? We really care about the integrity of the information that we're sharing. And I think that is still true. We want to make sure that what we're sharing is factual, but there's also, I think, a bigger room for just talking about it, normalizing it, stigmatizing it, making people feel comfortable to have a conversation about it. And that is where I think even through some of the, are we saying the right thing? Are we really educating people? Is what we're saying accurate? We started realizing, we are saying the right thing, and other people are now banding with us, and we're able to magnify the amplification of that voice and see more people become more comfortable with cannabis, see more people adopt cannabis. And I'm speaking specifically locally here. I mean, with our e-commerce, we do ship our products nationwide, so we are a national brand. But just locally, I mean, you could have never told me 5-10 years ago that I'd get to be talking about cannabis openly, publicly in my home state and helping change people's perspectives. And so I always feel very rewarded when people send us messages, or they see us at a show, or they come into the store and they share, their testimony of just how impactful cannabis has been. Hey, I'm bringing my son in today. And it's like, whoa, we thought that we were going to get a lot more younger generation bringing in, their parents' generation. And we've seen it almost the reverse. We're getting a lot more of maybe that baby boomer generation who is, quite frankly, tired of the, opioids and prescriptions that they've been sold over the years. And they're looking for alternatives, and they're discovering cannabis and how great it is. And then they're bringing their children in, or they're bringing their neighbors in, and they're able to have these conversations, and then you're hearing on the other side of it, you know, people kind of in my peer age group who are like, I never thought that I'd be able to publicly talk about cannabis with my parents, but they love your store, they love your content, they love shopping with you. And so it's really bringing this conversation to people that, in my opinion, maybe wouldn't have been able to have those conversations with their family, their friends, their parents, and being a facilitator who's empowering them, arming them with not only high quality cannabis products, but really truthfully, the education to make smart, informed decisions of what cannabis they want to put in their bodies. So I think that has been the most rewarding aspect of it, is just seeing Texans having positive experiences with cannabis, and we get, you know, to play a small hand in that conversation.
Nice. I bet that is really rewarding, especially when you have people giving you anecdotal information about how much it's helped them.
Absolutely. Like you said, we can't say, you know, that's why I was even earlier, I'm like, I can't say it's going to help you sleep better, but it's like anecdotally and personally, I know how tremendous it is for my sleep. And so, yes, we have to kind of dance that line. But it is very helpful and rewarding to hear the personal impact that our products and business have had on people.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think after talking to you for this little bit, I have some little bit of a clue, but Shayda, tell us, what makes you uniquely bodacious as a woman in business?
Oh man, well now I'm curious what your observation of me is. No, but I'll go first. You know, I think for me, it's always resonated with just being authentic and telling a story, and that story is very personal. But I think when we show up as ourselves and we speak openly about topics that maybe are uncomfortable for some people, we can start to help reshape the conversation. And so I have a lot of pride in being a female who, you know, has been given a microphone, so to speak, to talk about cannabis so openly, so publicly, and to help inspire and influence the next generation of this industry. And so I think for me, it's just really been being myself, getting to be myself publicly out loud, and have the support of my family, the support of my friends, the support of my community to continue to do what I do. And it really is a dream. Cannabis has impacted my life in so many different capacities. And now to get to be an entrepreneur and run a business with my sisters and be a female-led cannabis brand, it's all just kind of, you know, culminating into, hey, we get to wake up every day and be who we are. And that's a pretty great, you know, space to exist in. So I'm very grateful for that.
That is nice. And it's especially nice to be a female business, because, I mean, I don't know about you, but I see a lot of articles about, you know, cannabis now, it's mainstream, it's becoming male dominated. And
unfortunately,
well, and I read another article that said, you know what, that's actually not true, but I don't know.
Well, women were trending more, and then they kind of plateaued out. The last stat I saw was that the women were in a decline in the cannabis industry. And I don't know for, you know, what influence that data was pulled from, but it is challenging, right? I don't want people to think that it's not challenging, but is it a challenge that I take open armed and with a smile on my face to be changed, morphed, and like, you know, improved upon? Absolutely. So yeah, it is. It's a blessing.
I'm really happy for you. I'm excited to try your products too. Tell us, where can we find you and your products if people want to get in touch with you, and if they want to scope out and purchase your products?
Thank you so much. Yeah, I appreciate it. So like I mentioned, we have a brick and mortar, a physical location here in Austin, Texas, but we do ship nationwide at our website, Restart CBD. If people want to connect with us, get educated, just have a conversation, you can find us on pretty much every channel, YouTube, Facebook, all at Restart CBD. And we really appreciate these opportunities. Thanks for having us on the podcast, because it allows us to further advocate for cannabis on a national stage. And hopefully people got educated in the process. And if they have any follow-up questions, I'm sure you and certainly us, we would be more than happy to answer and guide them in the right direction.
Very awesome. Thank you so much for taking time out of your, what has to be a very busy day, to talk with us. Thank you, Shayda.
Thank you, Susan.